Hi there, I'm Helen, a 35-year-old woman who thrives on organization and tidiness. I work as an auditor for a prominent firm, and my meticulous habits, especially when it comes to keeping receipts and handling taxes, often become the subject of friendly teasing among my friends. However, I firmly believe these little routines are what keep my life running smoothly. My journey with my husband Scott began at a party hosted by our mutual friend Brenda. I remember that night vividly. I was enjoying a glass of wine and reconnecting with some old college friends when Scott walked in. Slightly older than me, he exuded confidence and flashed a captivating smile. As a manager at a food sales company, he approached me with an easy charm. "Hey, I'm Scott. Mind if I join you?" he asked, clutching a beer and meeting my gaze directly. "Sure, I'm Helen. Nice to meet you," I replied, mirroring his smile. Our conversation flowed effortlessly as we discovered our shared love for hiking and classic rock. A few months later, Scott invited me to a barbecue at his sister Margaret's house, marking my first encounter with his family. I felt a mix of excitement and nerves, but Margaret welcomed us warmly. Her 4 children were a whirlwind of energy, scattering toys and racing around. Despite my discomfort with the chaos, I introduced myself. "Nice to meet you all," I said as their antics escalated throughout the evening. As Scott and I grew closer, our discussions about the future deepened. He proposed during a scenic hike, the valley sprawling below us. It was a simple yet heartfelt moment, exactly my style. Our wedding was beautiful, though it was slightly disrupted by Margaret's kids, who reveled in their chaos. While Scott laughed it off, I struggled to contain my irritation, choosing to focus on the joy of our special day. After marriage, we decided it was time to buy our own home, transitioning from our rented apartment. One evening, during a conversation about finances and household responsibilities, Scott surprised me by offering to buy me a new car to replace my aging vehicle. I was taken aback, filled with delight. "Yeah, it's about time you had something dependable," he said with a warm smile, clearly excited about our future together. We dove into house hunting, and after a few weeks, we found a stunning home that was a bit pricey but felt perfect for us. The move was chaotic, but I was thrilled at the thought of decorating our new space. I spent hours selecting stylish furniture and appliances. Then, on a Saturday, Scott surprised me with a sleek, shiny new car. Overjoyed, I hugged him tightly. "Scott, this is incredible. Thank you so much," I exclaimed. "You're welcome, Helen. You deserve it," he replied with a smile. As we settled into our new home, everything seemed perfect. We both enjoyed our jobs and loved returning to our cozy, lovingly decorated space. However, as time passed, small things began to irritate me. Scott's once endearing, relaxed attitude started to wear on me, especially regarding household chores. "Scott, can you help with the dishes tonight?" I asked one evening after dinner. He glanced at me with tired eyes. "I had a long day. Can't we just do them tomorrow?" Frustration bubbled up inside me. "Scott, we can't keep putting things off. I'm tired too, but we need to maintain a clean home." Reluctantly, he agreed and got up from the couch. Just a few months into our marriage, it was clear we were facing some challenges. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me as I struggled to get pregnant. It was a source of constant stress, and though my doctor assured me it would happen when the time was right, it was hard not to worry. Meanwhile, Scott's sister Margaret, who lived just a state away, seemed to be visiting us constantly. It felt like she was practically living next door. Each visit was a torrent of her marital troubles. "Helen, you won't believe what Kevin did this time," she would start, rolling her eyes dramatically. One evening, desperate to change the subject, I suggested, "Margaret, can we talk about something else for a change?" "Oh, come on, Helen. I need to vent. You're the only one who gets it," she replied, oblivious to my discomfort. Her kids were equally exhausting, transforming our home into a chaotic circus the moment they arrived. Running, fighting, throwing food, and being incredibly loud. After a long week, all I wanted was some peace, but that seemed impossible. "Guys, can you please calm down?" I pleaded, struggling to maintain my composure. "Why are you always so uptight, Helen?" Margaret snapped when I tried to manage her kids' behavior. "They're making a mess, Margaret. I just cleaned up," I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Then she delivered a low blow that hit hard. "Well, maybe if you had your own kids, you'd understand." Her words stung deeply, especially given my struggles with fertility. I couldn't believe Scott didn't stand up for me. "Scott, are you going to let her talk to me like that?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. Calm down, Helen. You're making a big deal out of nothing, he replied, siding with her yet again. A big deal out of nothing. She just insulted me in my own home, I shouted, tears threatening to spill. I was done with feeling undermined and unappreciated in my own space, especially when Scott always took his sister's side. This constant disrespect was wearing me down, and I knew something had to change. One Saturday, Margaret showed up unannounced with her 4 kids in tow. Helen, I need a break from parenting. I'm going shopping, she declared, dropping her kids off without waiting for a response. The irony of her using the word parenting made me chuckle despite my frustration. Fine, but make it quick, I replied, the stress already mounting. Thanks, Helen. You're a lifesaver, she chirped, grabbing her purse and rushing out before I could protest. There I was in the kitchen, trying to cook dinner. For me, cooking was a meticulous process, and I liked everything to be just right. But with the kids causing chaos, focusing was nearly impossible. They ran around, yelling and making a mess. Guys, can you keep it down? I shouted from the kitchen, hoping for a moment of peace. Of course, they paid no attention. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the house, and my heart sank. I dashed into the living room, only to find my worst fear realized. My grandfather's antique Chinese vase lay shattered on the floor. My chest tightened with anger and frustration. What the hell happened here? I screamed, facing the kids, who stood frozen with guilty expressions. We were just playing, one of them mumbled, avoiding my gaze. This vase was priceless, it belonged to my grandfather. Do you understand what you've done? I was livid, shaking with rage. Just then, Scott walked in, calm and clueless. What's going on, Helen? He asked, noticing the chaos. Your niece and nephews just broke my grandfather's vase. Look at this mess. I pointed to the shattered pieces on the floor. Calm down, Helen. It's just a vase. We can get it fixed, Scott said, dismissing my feelings as if it were nothing. Scott, this isn't just about the vase, it's about respect. I'm tired of this. Every time Margaret visits, our house turns into a disaster zone, and you don't seem to care. My voice cracked with frustration. Just then, Margaret walked in, bags in hand, looking annoyed. What's all this yelling about? Your kids broke my grandfather's vase. Look at this mess. I pointed to the floor, struggling to hold back tears. Well, maybe you should have kept a better eye on them, she shot back, completely unapologetic. Are you kidding me? They're your kids, Margaret. I shouldn't have to watch them. My hands trembled with anger. Scott shook his head, looking annoyed. You're overreacting, Helen. Just drop it. Overreacting? I've had enough of this. I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter in my own home. I screamed, tears finally spilling over. Scott stood there silent and cold while Margaret smirked as if she had won some kind of victory. I couldn't take it anymore. Overwhelmed by a mix of anger, hurt, and betrayal, I stormed out of the room. Margaret's chaotic visits had been a recurring issue for months, but I had no idea what was coming next. One morning, as Scott sat at the kitchen table munching on his toast, he casually dropped a bombshell. Helen, I need to tell you something. Margaret's getting divorced and she's moving in with us, with the kids, for a few months, he announced as if discussing the weather. I nearly dropped my coffee. Are you serious? Our house is already a madhouse. Handling their chaos for a day is one thing, but living with it for months, that's a whole different story. I felt overwhelmed as I pointed out the situation. Scott looked at me earnestly. She's my sister, Helen. She needs our help. You need to be more understanding. Understanding? Scott, I've been extremely patient, but this is just too much. Why can't we rent a place for her nearby? I'll even pay for the first month's rent, I suggested, trying to keep my composure. No, she'll be better off here. Plus, you can help with the kids and keep things clean, he replied, as if the arrangement was obvious. I'm not a babysitter, Scott. I work full-time too, and I need my downtime when I get home, I retorted, my frustration boiling over. Stop being so selfish, Helen. It's family. They need us, he snapped, his tone growing sharp. I'm not being selfish. I'm looking for a reasonable compromise. I won't let my life be completely disrupted. My anger surged. Well, they're coming tomorrow evening, so you better get used to the idea, Scott said abruptly before standing up and leaving the kitchen. I was stunned, feeling blindsided and betrayed. The next morning, still reeling from our argument, I dressed for work and went to grab my car keys. But they were missing. When I called Scott, his tone was disturbingly calm. I took the car. It's mine, remember? I'm giving it to Margaret so she can use it for the kids, he informed me nonchalantly. You're giving my car to Margaret? Are you serious right now? I managed to say, shock coursing through me. It's not your car, Helen. I paid for it, and she needs it more than you do, he replied matter-of-factly. That was the last straw. You've taken everything from me, and I'm done, I said, my voice trembling with resolve. What are you talking about? Don't be dramatic, Helen, he replied, completely missing the gravity of the situation. I hung up, feeling trapped in a nightmare. How had things deteriorated so badly? I immediately called a moving company. Hi, I need a team to move some furniture and appliances today. It's urgent. The movers arrived a few hours later. I directed them around the house, pointing out what to take: the beds, sofas, chandeliers, even the bathroom faucets. Watching them remove each item brought me a peculiar sense of relief. Everything goes to my mom's house. Thanks for the quick work, guys, I said, handing over a tip. With the house now empty, I gathered my essentials and drove to my mom's place. Later that day, my phone buzzed relentlessly with calls from Scott, which I ignored, feeling a mix of anxiety and empowerment. That evening, a loud knock rattled the door. I opened the door to find Scott furious. What the hell, Helen? What did you do? He shouted, storming into the living room. I took my stuff, Scott. You took the car, so I took what I bought, I replied calmly. This is insane. You stripped the house bare. Where are Margaret and the kids supposed to sleep? He yelled, his face flushed with anger. That's your problem, Scott. You made this mess. Now you deal with it, I said, folding my arms defiantly. You're a thief, Helen. You stole everything, he accused, waving his arms frantically. I didn't steal anything. Here are the receipts, I responded, pulling out a folder and showing him proof of purchase for all the furniture and appliances. He flipped through the receipts, his anger shifting to frustration. Fine, Helen. If this is how you want to play it, I'll file for divorce, Scott said bitterly. I took a deep breath and handed him a stack of papers. Already done. Here are the divorce papers. We're finished. His face turned pale as he stared at the documents. You're serious about this, aren't you? Dead serious, Scott. I deserve better than this, I replied, a strange sense of calm washing over me. Without another word, he pulled a pen from his pocket, signed the papers, and handed them back to me. Fine, Helen. Have it your way. I watched him walk out of my mom's house, the door slamming shut behind him. For a moment, I stood there, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It was over, and deep down, I knew it was the right decision. That night, I sat down with my mom and recounted everything that had happened. She listened, her presence comforting. When I finished, she nodded in agreement. Helen, you've been through so much. It's time you focus on yourself and your happiness, she said, hugging me tightly. Thanks, Mom. I just need some time to figure things out, I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. In the days that followed, I began to settle into a new routine. I organized my space at my mom's house and started thinking about my next steps. It felt like a fresh start, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it head-on. I had reclaimed my life, and there was no turning back. After the divorce, Scott and I sold our house and split the proceeds. I decided it was time to find a place of my own. While my mom's house was a wonderful temporary sanctuary, I craved my own space. One afternoon, as we sat in the kitchen together, I scrolled through apartment listings on my laptop. Mom, I think I found the perfect place. It's a small apartment downtown, close to work, I said, showing her the pictures. She leaned over my shoulder and smiled. That looks nice, Helen. Have you called the realtor yet? Not yet, but I'm going to do that right now, I replied, feeling a surge of excitement. I dialed the number and waited for the realtor to pick up. After a few rings, a friendly voice answered. Hello, this is Raymond. How can I help you? Hi, Raymond. My name is Helen. I'm interested in the apartment you have listed downtown. Is it still available? I asked, crossing my fingers. Yes, it's still available. Would you like to schedule a viewing? He replied, sounding upbeat. Absolutely. How about tomorrow afternoon? I suggested, trying to keep my composure. That works for me. I'll see you at 4:00 p.m. Raymond confirmed before we ended the call. The next day, I met Raymond downtown to view the apartment. He greeted me with a warm smile outside the building. Hi, Helen. Nice to meet you. Let me show you around, he said, shaking my hand. The apartment was small but cozy, just what I needed. It featured a lovely kitchen, a spacious living room, and a small balcony with a decent view of the city. This place is perfect, Raymond. I'll take it, I declared, a wave of relief washing over me. After signing the lease and receiving the keys, I started planning my move. I wanted to make this new space truly my own. Over the next few days, I packed up at my mom's house and arranged for movers to handle the larger items. On moving day, my mom watched as the movers loaded up the truck. She hugged me tightly, her eyes glistening with emotion but her smile radiating pride. You're doing the right thing, Helen. I'm proud of you, she said. Thanks, Mom. Here's to new beginnings, I replied, feeling ready to embrace whatever came next with open arms and an open heart. As the last box was hoisted into the moving truck, excitement and nerves swirled inside me about stepping into this new chapter of my life. This is going to be great for you. A fresh start is just what you need, my mom said, wrapping me in a comforting hug. Thanks, Mom. I'm looking forward to it, I replied, smiling broadly. We drove to my new downtown apartment, and with the help of my mom and a couple of close friends, we quickly unloaded and set everything up. As I surveyed my new surroundings, a sense of accomplishment washed over me. This was the beginning of a new chapter, and I was ready to embrace it. That evening, to celebrate the move, I invited my mom and friends to stay for dinner. We ordered pizza and gathered on the floor amidst the boxes, raising our glasses of soda and a makeshift toast. Cheers to Helen in her new place, my friend Brenda exclaimed. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate all your help and support, I said, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. As the night progressed, we shared laughs and stories, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy and free. Later, sitting on my balcony overlooking the city lights, I reflected on everything I had been through and how much I had grown. I was proud of myself for taking control of my life and making the necessary changes. From mutual friends, I learned that Scott had used his share of the money to buy a small apartment where he now lived with Margaret and her 4 kids. He was working 3 jobs to cover the bills while Margaret remained unemployed, and they were constantly arguing. Then, unexpectedly, Scott called me one day. Seeing his name flash on my phone screen was a surprise, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Scott. What's up? I responded, keeping my tone neutral. Helen, please just hear me out, he began, his voice tinged with desperation. I know I messed up. I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't realize how hard it was for you with Margaret's kids. I couldn't help but chuckle slightly. Really, Scott, you're realizing this now after all this time? Yeah, I know it's late, but I'm serious. I've been thinking a lot and I miss you. I miss us. Can we start over? I'm ready to move into your apartment and make things right, he said, his voice almost pleading. I shook my head in disbelief, a chuckle escaping my lips. Scott, you've got to be kidding me. You think you can just waltz back into my life like nothing happened? Helen, I'm serious. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll even take on more work to make it up to you, he insisted, sounding desperate. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. Scott, it's too late for that. I've moved on. I'm building a life I love, and there's no room in it for the kind of drama you bring. I wish you the best with your situation, but I'm not interested in going back. Goodbye, Scott. With that, I ended the call, a sense of finality settling in. Turning back to the city lights, I felt a renewed sense of freedom. I was ready to move forward on my terms without looking back. I've moved on. I'm happy now, and I'm not looking to go back to that mess, I have firmly told him. Come on, Helen, we can make it work this time. I've changed, he insisted, a mix of desperation and hope in his voice. Feeling a blend of pity and irritation, I responded, Scott, it's over. You need to focus on your own life and your family. I'm not interested in going back to that chaos. Please, I'm begging you, he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. Scott, no. I've found peace without you, and I'm not giving that up, I said, stating my ground. Take care, Scott. I hope you find your way. After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of relief and closure. It was clear Scott was struggling, but I couldn't let his problems pull me back into a situation I had worked so hard to escape. Later that day, I met up with Brenda for coffee and shared the bizarre encounter. You won't believe who called me today, I began, rolling my eyes playfully. Who? Brenda asked, raising an eyebrow in curiosity. Scott, he begged me to take him back and let him move into my apartment, I recounted, shaking my head in disbelief. Brenda laughed, almost spitting out her coffee. Are you serious? What did you say? I told him no, of course, I'm not going back to that mess, I replied, a smile spreading across my face. We spent the rest of the afternoon chatting and laughing, and I realized just how far I had come. I had built a new life for myself, one that was peaceful and fulfilling. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As I walked home later, a deep sense of satisfaction and peace washed over me. I had finally closed the chapter on that turbulent part of my life and was ready to move forward with confidence and joy. The city around me seemed to echo my newfound freedom, and with each step, I felt more assured of the bright future ahead.
Since our child is young, we'll take the inheritance. My brother-in-law Mark and his wife Autumn are set to inherit everything. Recently, Peter passed away after I had cared for him alone for years. After witnessing his final moments, I was overwhelmed with grief, but continued preparing for the funeral. On the day of the funeral, Mark and Autumn did nothing to help and showed complete disregard, which only fueled my anger. During the service, I was stunned by something Autumn said. So, should we go on a trip after the funeral? Mark also made careless comments throughout the day.
Yeah, we should plan a vacation.
Inside, I was boiling with rage. Although the funeral ended and we returned to our daily lives, my anxiety about the inheritance lingered. A month after Mark and Autumn returned from their overseas trip, Autumn called me out of the blue. Hey, what's going on with the inheritance? Susan's passing had unearthed hidden family issues, and now the fight over Peter's inheritance was causing even more turmoil. I'm Gemma James, a 30-year-old part-time worker at a local grocery store. I used to work for a major company, but I left to care for Peter. I'm organized, responsible, and I value harmony with others, but I sometimes struggle to voice my opinions. Still, I've always had a strong will and never shy away from hard work. At the store, I don't just handle checkout and stocking, but I also play a crucial role in keeping the store running smoothly. I help with everything from product displays to inventory management, customer service, and even cleaning. Every day begins with setting up the displays.
Good morning, Gemma. Let's have another great day.
Good morning. I'll do my best today. I greet the regular customers warmly.
Thanks for always being so friendly. Your smile brightens my day.
Thank you for always coming in. If you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask. I also enjoy chatting with my coworker Emily. What did you bring for lunch today? Susan made some braised veggies for me. How about you? I brought a sandwich. I've been so busy lately that I've had to cut corners. Even though I enjoy work, I find the casual conversations with coworkers the most fun. After work, I head home to take care of Peter, my father-in-law.
Thanks again, Gemma.
It's no problem, Peter. Caring for him can be challenging, but his gratitude and smiles give me the strength to keep going every day. I believe that small daily efforts can lead to big rewards, and I try to balance both my job and home life. I met my husband, Tom, when we both worked at a big company. He was my boss, and I admired his work ethic. After a year of dating, we got married, and I moved in with his parents. Our life together has been peaceful, and Tom continues to be as supportive as ever.
Let's do our best today, okay?
Every morning, he encourages me before work. When I started working at the grocery store, Tom always reassured me.
Whatever job you're doing, Gemma, I'm sure your hard work is making an impact on someone.
When I got home after a long day, Tom had cooked dinner for me.
I made dinner tonight.
His words instantly lifted the weight of the day off my shoulders. He had prepared a delicious pasta dish, salad, and even a homemade dessert. Oh, thank you so much. You've made my day. Tom's mother, Susan, who raised him, was also incredibly kind and caring.
Gemma, breakfast is ready.
Thanks, Susan. I'll be right there. I come down to a table full of delicious food that she'd made.
Do you have anything special planned today, Tom? No, just a regular work day, but I do have an important meeting this afternoon.
I'd watch these family moments and feel so lucky to be a part of it. My in-laws treated me like their own daughter, something I deeply appreciated since I had a difficult relationship with my own parents.
Gemma, would you like to go shopping with me this afternoon?
Of course, I'd love to. Is there something you're looking for?
I was hoping to buy some new clothes. Could you help me pick something out?
Her eyes lit up with excitement, and I couldn't wait to help her shop. We often went on trips as a family of 4, with Peter always planning the best vacations.
Where do you want to go for our next trip?
I'd love to go to a luxurious hotel. What about you, Mom?
That sounds perfect. A relaxing soak and a good meal would be lovely.
We created so many happy memories together. Although we struggled to have children, my in-laws never pressured us. They always supported us and encouraged us to leave things to nature. One day, Susan approached me quietly.
Gemma, there's something I want to tell you.
What is it, Susan? My heart raced as I wondered what she was going to say.
You're doing such a great job, and we think of you like our daughter. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask.
I was so touched that tears welled up in my eyes. Thank you, Susan. I'm so grateful to you too. I felt so fortunate to live in such a loving and supportive environment. But there was one person I found difficult to get along with, Mark and his wife, Autumn. They were often insensitive and dismissive of the family. They didn't even call or send a gift on Susan's birthday. On a later visit, Autumn looked at a photo and remarked, "Wow, that's a pretty cheap cake." And this, coming from someone who didn't even say happy birthday. There were many incidents like this.
Gemma, your cooking is nothing like Mom's. I don't really like it.
Mark said this at a family gathering, laughing, and it hurt me deeply. Another time, I was talking about a hobby I enjoyed, and Mark quietly listened before sneering.
Isn't that a waste of time?
Being dismissed for something that brought me joy was painful. Tom shared his frustration with me.
My brother's personality changed when he started dating Autumn.
Tom had tried to confront Mark before, telling him to be more considerate.
Mark, you've got to stop being so rude to the family. Think before you speak. What? I was just joking. Relax.
Mark never showed any remorse. Despite this, I tried to accept them as family, but my patience ran out when Susan, who was like an angel, passed away. During her hospitalization, I visited every day, and I even invited Autumn to come along, but she refused. Visiting her would just be a waste of time. She never visited once, and I was completely shocked by her indifference. I was disappointed, but I tried to focus on Susan's well-being and not let it bother me. The day of the wake arrived, and the family gathered in sorrow. Tom and I were reminiscing about Susan's life, trying to hold back our tears as we prepared for the service. Susan was such a wonderful person. She always supported us.
I'm so grateful for everything she did.
Meanwhile, Autumn sat there, expressionless, doing nothing to help, instead glued to her phone. Could you help with something? Help with what? No thanks, I'm not interested. Her cold response infuriated me, but I chose to focus on honoring Susan instead of reacting. As the relatives arrived and shared stories about Susan, we all wished for her peaceful rest. Peter was devastated, and Tom and I stayed close to support him.
Dad, are you okay? You don't look well. Maybe you should sit down and rest for a while. Thanks, Tom. And Gemma, thank you as well.
During the wake, everyone paid their respects to Susan, offering prayers for her soul. Thank you, Mom. Please, rest in peace. I fought back tears as I said my final goodbye. Autumn, however, didn't shed a single tear. Her detached attitude annoyed me, but I couldn't let my emotions take over in front of everyone. As the wake came to an end and people started leaving, Autumn suddenly spoke up. So, what's happening with the inheritance? I was speechless, feeling both shock and anger. How can you bring that up now? We just lost someone so important. Oh, come on. I know you're thinking about it too. Aren't you curious? Let's get it sorted out quickly. Tom's face grew stern as he listened to her words.
Our mother just passed away. Show some respect.
Whatever. The inheritance is just going to be split between the siblings, right? Peter overheard the conversation and stepped in.
Enough. Mom's will states that everything will be divided equally, so there's no need for any arguments.
Autumn rolled her eyes, but seemed to accept his words for the moment. I felt some relief, but her attitude hadn't changed. It was clear that all she cared about was the inheritance, and there was no gratitude or appreciation for Susan. When the time came to distribute the inheritance, everything was divided equally between the siblings, just as the will stated. Autumn was irritated throughout the process, treating it as a burden. Why is this taking so long? It's such a waste of time when the amount we're getting won't change anyway. We finished the process, but the tension between us remained.
I'm sorry you had to deal with all of this.
It's not your fault. We did everything we could, and that's enough. That night, I looked at a photo of Susan and reflected on how much I missed her kindness. Tears filled my eyes as I realized how big of an impact she had on my life. After that day, I began distancing myself from Mark and Autumn. I realized that sometimes to protect the bond of family, you have to set boundaries. Every family is different, and while challenges will arise, working together and doing what's right is what makes a family. But Mark and Autumn only cared about themselves. Could I even call them family anymore? It was that day that I made my decision to cut ties with them. 3 years have passed since then, and I've been taking care of Peter. Ever since Susan passed away, Peter's health had been declining. Watching him grow weaker broke my heart, but I continued caring for him alone. Tom was busy with work, and Mark and Autumn had no involvement in the caregiving. One day, during a conversation about Peter's care, Autumn made a callous comment. "Why don't you just put him in a nursing home already?" Her lack of empathy was infuriating. "I mean, what's the big deal? You're stressing yourself out for no reason. Just hand it over to the professionals." It's true that if I put him in a home, I might feel less pressure, but he had done so much for me, and I was determined to be there for him until the end. I bit my tongue and let her words pass, even though they made me furious. As I continued to care for Peter, my frustration grew. One day his condition suddenly worsened, and we had to rush him to the hospital. Tom hurried to the hospital, but unfortunately Peter passed away. I was heartbroken, but I also felt a sense of relief that his suffering had ended. As we prepared for the funeral, Mark and Autumn continued to show their true colors.
"I'm busy with work, so I'm not going to make it to the funeral. Sorry."
They weren't even planning to attend, and their excuses left me completely disgusted. On the day of the funeral, I was emotionally and physically exhausted, but I welcomed the attendees with a strong front. Tom helped, but Mark and Autumn did absolutely nothing. Instead, Autumn was busy taking pictures of her daughter in various outfits and posting them on social media. Last year, Autumn had given birth to a daughter, and since then she had been obsessively posting every little detail of her life online. The funeral was no exception. Autumn even posted, "At my beloved grandpa's funeral today," despite never bringing her daughter to visit her grandparents before. When I saw the post during a break, I couldn't help but let out a frustrated sigh. My frustration was building, but I kept it inside for the sake of Peter. In the middle of the chaos, I arranged the flowers and mementos he loved, hoping they would bring peace to his spirit. Guests shared their memories of him, and I was reminded once again of how much he meant to everyone.
"Gemma, thank you for everything. You've done so much for Dad."
Tom's words lightened my heart a little, but Autumn's inconsiderate behavior continued. After the funeral ended and most of the guests had left, I noticed Autumn scrolling through her phone again. "I got some good photos. I'm going to post these too." I had reached my limit with her, but for the sake of the situation, I held my tongue once more. I wished I could stand up for myself, but I knew now wasn't the time. After everyone left, I stood in front of Peter's picture and bowed my head. "Dad, please continue to watch over us." After most of the guests had gone, the remaining relatives gathered for a meal, and naturally the conversation turned to memories of Peter.
"He was such a kind man. He always put his family first, especially after your mother passed away." "Yeah, I have nothing but gratitude for him."
Peter was gentle and caring, and he always treated everyone with respect. He worked at the local factory for years, raising Tom and Mark while supporting the family. He also loved bonsai trees and was meticulous in caring for them. He often planned family trips, taking us to places and tourist spots. His warm smile and kind voice were memories I would cherish forever.
"You know, he even started investing on the side. I think he wanted to leave a little something for everyone."
I was taken aback by this revelation. I had no idea he was doing that for us.
"Wow, that's surprising. Dad never mentioned it. He actually asked me for advice a few times. He wasn't an expert in finance, but he wanted to learn so that he could leave a legacy for you all." "That sounds just like Dad. He always put the family first."
Learning about his quiet efforts to invest for our sake deepened my appreciation for him even more. His thoughtfulness extended beyond just money. What he left behind wasn't just material wealth, but the love and dedication he'd shown to his family throughout his life. However, the peaceful moment didn't last long. Autumn interrupted the conversation. "Well, since our child is still young, we'll be taking the inheritance, right?" Everyone froze in shock at her audacity. I couldn't believe she said that out loud. Mark smirked and chimed in.
"Yeah, if Dad was investing, there must be a decent amount of money, right? Maybe we should plan a vacation after all.
His casual tone infuriated me, but I didn't want to cause a scene at the funeral. The other relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly disturbed by their comments.
Now's not the time to be talking about that, don't you think?
But we're going to need the money, especially for families with young children like ours.
I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Autumn, this is a time to remember Peter. Let's talk about the inheritance later.
Fine, but we need to discuss it soon.
Inside, I was seething with anger, but I maintained my composure for the sake of the moment. The issue of Peter's inheritance was inevitable, but it wasn't something that should be discussed during a time of mourning. After dinner, the remaining relatives began to leave, and Tom and I went to Peter's room to start sorting through his belongings. As we carefully handled his things, we were reminded of the warmth and love he had given us.
Gemma, I really appreciate everything you've done. Taking care of Dad would have been so much harder without you.
We're family, Tom. Of course I'd help. Let's honor Peter's memory and carry his love with us from here on out. Exhausted, we finally went home after the long day. As we sat on the edge of our bed, Tom and I exchanged weary glances, both drained emotionally and physically. Meanwhile, Mark and Autumn were already planning their next vacation.
So, where should we go next? Maybe a casino?
Yeah, casino sounds nice, but I'd love to go abroad this time.
Their carefree attitude only added to my frustration. I decided to wait and see how the inheritance would be distributed, determined to handle things calmly and rationally. About a month after the funeral, I was still dealing with the emotional weight of sorting through Peter's belongings. Tom and I were both exhausted, but Mark and Autumn acted as if nothing had happened. One day, they suddenly showed up at our house with news.
Hey, Mark and I are planning a trip overseas. Want to join us?
What, now? Are you serious? We just lost Peter a month ago, and we're not even done going through his things.
We need a break. Don't you think you and Tom could use one too?
I was beyond shocked by their complete lack of tact.
Look, this isn't the time for a vacation. We still need to finish handling Dad's affairs. Oh, come on. Gemma can take care of it while we're gone. She's been doing a great job.
Why would it be my responsibility?
We'll be back in no time. No big deal. By the way, we have a favor to ask.
I braced myself, sensing where this was going.
Could you watch your daughter while we are away? We can't bring her without a passport, and we'd feel much better if you took care of her.
I was so taken aback that I almost gasped out loud.
Are you serious right now? You want to leave your child with us while you go on vacation? Dad just passed away. Don't you care?
We just really need a recharge, so can you help us out, Gemma?
I was stunned and couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could they even think of asking us such a thing during this difficult time?
It's only for a few days. Come on, please.
Autumn remained completely unfazed by the absurdity of her request. Just when I thought I couldn't be more shocked, they started packing their bags right there in front of us. Autumn held her daughter, checking her phone for last-minute travel details. You're really going? Now?
Yep, we'll be back soon. Call us if you need anything.
I was speechless as I watched them leave, waving cheerfully as they drove off. Tom and I stood there dumbfounded by their complete lack of decency.
I can't believe them. What on earth are they thinking?
Not only were we still grieving and busy with Peter's affairs, but now we were also responsible for their child. 2 days later, while Mark and Autumn were on their trip, I got a sudden phone call from Autumn. I could hear her panicking on the other end of the line, her voice so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear.
The credit card isn't working.
For a moment, I thought they might have been the victims of fraud, but then I listened carefully to the situation. What happened?
We tried to make a big purchase, and the card was declined. Why would it be stopped?
Honestly, I didn't care why their card was declined, but I offered some possible explanation. Maybe the card expired or there's no more balance left?
No way! It's Peter's card.
I was stunned. That was the moment I realized they were using Peter's card for their personal expenses. Wait, you're using Peter's card? Without permission?
Well, he's gone, so what does that matter?
How do you even know his PIN? Apparently, Mark had once helped their father withdraw cash, and he remembered the PIN. He tried it on the credit card and it worked. I think the card was flagged for suspicious activity since you're using it overseas without authorization.
What? Why would that happen?
Because it's illegal. Even if Peter is gone, the money is still his until the inheritance is legally settled.
What do you mean? The inheritance is already ours. Why can't we use it?
Legally, it's still Peter's. You can't just take it before the process is complete. I was both shocked and disappointed. I realized that even though we were family, this was a serious issue. You need to return the money and stop using the card. Otherwise, this could become a bigger problem.
I don't care. It's Peter's money and now it's ours. We have the right to use it.
Autumn hung up on me, and I immediately told Tom about the situation.
What happened?
They were trying to use Peter's card on their trip, but it got declined because the card company flagged it.
You've got to be kidding me.
We need to tell the rest of the family and contact the bank if needed. We shared the situation with the family, knowing that this could complicate the inheritance even further. The next few days passed, but the frustration lingered. I couldn't stop thinking about how irresponsible Mark and Autumn were being. One morning, while I was busy with household chores, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Peter's lawyer, Mr. Johnson.
Good morning, Gemma. I apologize for dropping by unannounced, but I need to discuss your father-in-law's estate. May I come in?
Of course, please come in. What's going on?
It's about your father-in-law's will. I'd like to go over the details with you and Tom. Is he home?
Tom's not here right now, but I'll call him. He'll be home soon. I called Tom, and he rushed home. We sat together in the living room, eager to hear what Mr. Johnson had to say.
Sorry to keep you waiting. What's this about? It's about your father's will. He left explicit instructions regarding his estate, and I'm here to inform you of the details.
Mr. Johnson pulled out a document and laid it on the table.
According to the will, your father's entire estate will be left to you, Tom, as the sole beneficiary.
Tom and I were stunned. We exchanged shocked glances, unsure of what to say.
The amount is substantial, more than I think you were expecting. Here's a breakdown of the total.
Tom and I looked at the document, and the figure was far larger than we had imagined.
This is incredible.
Tom took a moment to process it all, then turned to Mr. Johnson.
Thank you for handling this. I'll make sure to follow my father's wishes. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm here to assist in any way I can.
After Mr. Johnson left, Tom immediately called Mark to inform him of the will.
Hey bro, what's up? I was just about to go to bed. Mark, we need to talk about Dad's estate. It's important. Oh, right. So, are we finally splitting the inheritance? Actually, no. Dad left everything in me in his will. What? That's impossible. You're joking, right? I'm not joking. Mr. Johnson came by and showed us the will. It's all written clearly. Everything goes to me. That's not fair. We're both his kids. I know it's hard to accept, but this is how Dad wanted it. And by the way, using Dad's card while on your trip was illegal.
There was silence on the other end. Then Mark's voice grew louder.
No way! That can't be right. There must be a mistake. I've already confirmed it with the lawyer, and you should know, trying to use Dad's card was against the law. What? But we thought we could use the inheritance for the trip. We just bought a bunch of expensive stuff. What are we supposed to do now?
I couldn't believe the absurdity of what I was hearing. They had spent money they didn't even have, counting on an inheritance that wasn't theirs yet.
Mark, what's going on? What are we going to do about the money we spend?
Come on, Tom. Help us out here. We're stuck. You've got to figure this out yourself. You can't expect me to just fix everything. We're desperate. We're in over our heads.
For the first time, I felt a grim satisfaction. They had dug themselves into this hole. While part of me was relieved that things were finally falling into place, I couldn't help but shake my head at Mark and Autumn's recklessness. It was clear that their financial irresponsibility had caught up to them, and they were now facing the consequences. They might try to contest the will, but I doubted they had much of a case. In the days that followed, Tom and I carefully planned how we would use the inheritance to honor his father's wishes and secure our future.
Let's focus on what Dad would have wanted. To use this money wisely and make sure our family is taken care of.
Absolutely. We should save for the kids' education, fix up the house, and make sure we're financially secure. We also knew we couldn't ignore Mark and Autumn entirely, despite their irresponsibility. They were family after all.
We'll have to help them out a bit, but we can't let them rely on us forever.
They need to learn from their mistakes and stand on their own 2 feet. Tom and I began managing the inheritance carefully, setting aside money for necessary repairs and future expenses, all while keeping our focus on family. We also made a plan to give Mark and Autumn some support, but only to help them rebuild responsibly.
Mark, Autumn, we'll help you get back on your feet, but you need to be careful from now on. No more reckless spending. Yeah, we've learned our lesson. Thanks for helping, bro.
Oh, we're sorry. We'll make sure not to mess up again.
They slowly began to change their behavior, putting more effort into managing their money wisely. As a family, we vowed to use Peter's legacy to strengthen our bond and ensure everyone's well-being. And just as Peter had always hoped, we moved forward, supporting one another and living with gratitude for the life and love he left behind. After Mark and Autumn returned from their trip, they came to us asking for help to pay off their debt. I was tempted to say, "This is your problem," but I knew we couldn't leave them stranded entirely. In the end, we gave them a portion of the inheritance, but made it clear that this was their last chance to prove they could be responsible. The inheritance had always been about family, and we hoped this final act of support would push them to grow.
Mark, I'm giving you part of Dad's inheritance, but this is it. You need to take responsibility for your actions from here on out. Yeah, I get it. I'll be more careful this time.
Thank you. We know we've been reckless, but we'll change, I promise.
It was difficult to trust them after everything that had happened, but Tom and I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt one last time. We felt it was the right thing to do, considering the importance of family. Time passed, and while we focused on using the inheritance wisely, we watched Mark and Autumn's behavior closely. Surprisingly, they did seem to start making better decisions. They cut back on their lavish spending and began managing their finances more carefully. It wasn't easy for them, but slowly they were starting to realize the value of working hard and being responsible.
It looks like they're finally getting it.
I really hope this change lasts. While they worked on rebuilding their lives, Tom and I continued to honor Peter's memory by making thoughtful plans for the future. We allocated part of the inheritance to repair the house, save for the future, and ensure we could provide for the family, especially when we had children. Even though we still felt resentment toward Mark and Autumn for how they had acted, we chose to focus on what was most important, the well-being of the family. It was during this time that I realized how crucial it was to keep the family united, even when things were tough. Peter's legacy wasn't just the money, it was the love and support he has shown all of us, and we had to carry that forward. As we moved on with our lives, I often thought about how much Peter had done for us. He really did everything he could to make sure we were okay.
Yeah, now it's our turn to do the same for the next generation.
A few months later, Mark and Autumn returned to us, looking more humbled than I had ever seen them.
We just wanted to thank you, really. You didn't have to help us after everything we did, but you did.
We're so sorry for everything. We're going to do better from now on.
For the first time, their apology felt genuine. I could see that they were truly trying to change. I'm glad you're both doing better. Just remember, it's up to you to keep this going.
We will, Gemma. Thanks again.
While their words were reassuring, only time would tell if they could maintain this new path. In the months that followed, Tom and I continued to focus on building a secure and happy future for our family. The inheritance was put to good use. Our home was repaired, and we made sure we had enough saved for the future. As for Mark and Autumn, they slowly but surely began to rebuild their lives. They started making more practical choices, cutting back on unnecessary expenses and focusing on creating a stable life for their daughter. It wasn't always easy to forget the past, but we had done our best to guide them back on track, just as Peter would have wanted. In the end, the inheritance had brought out the worst in Mark and Autumn, but it also gave them a chance to grow. And for us, it served as a reminder of how important it is to stay grounded, to keep family at the center of everything we do. Peter's legacy wasn't just about the money. He had left behind something far more valuable, the lesson that love and family are what truly matter. As time went on, Tom and I found peace in knowing that we had used the inheritance in a way that honored his father's wishes. We were able to move forward with our lives, stronger and more connected than before. And just as Peter had hoped, we continued to support each other as a family, making sure that his love and dedication lived on in all of us. Finally, after everything we had been through, we were able to leave the turmoil of the past behind and focus on the future.